is a country that's had a reputation always for being expensive. Now I'm told that it's 25% cheaper than it was a couple of years ago. I'll be checking that out. My journey starts in the Swedish capital, Stockholm. To keep costs down, I have a rail pass and the choice of some 280 guest houses and hostels throughout the country. They're all listed in this booklet, and I can tell you there's some pretty strange places. And this is actually a prison, but then you can probably tell that from the door. The modest Langholm Hotel offers good quality, reflecting Sweden's high standards, and the cost compares favourably with most European city centre accommodation. Let's continue our price investigation at Stockholm railway station. Well, for lunch I'm having the dish of the day. It's flounder with shrimp sauce and vegetables, then there's bread and butter, salad, the water's thrown in, and that is 47 krona. This is where I need my money exchange converter. Elsewhere in the station, burger, chips and a drink actually cost more, about £4.78. You may pay a bit extra for the fun of eating and drinking outdoors, but the pavement cafes were packing them in during last July's hot spell. Souvenirs. Department stores are best, no bargains here, but glassware is worth considering. In the old town, small individually owned shops offer some unusual presents. But there's far more to Stockholm than shopping, a city that floats on water, it's been called. And appropriately, another example of inexpensive accommodation on board the AF Chapman, where former crewmen still meet.
On board this ship as a young boy, we learned it.
English is widely spoken throughout Sweden. In this culturally minded city, there are over 50 museums. If you've time to visit only one, then it has to be the Vasa. This formidable 17th century warship capsized and sank 15 minutes into its maiden voyage. It was raised from the seabed over 300 years later in 1961. To get into the museums free, you should have one of these, a Stockholm pass. It also takes you free on the buses, on local trains and sightseeing round the harbour. Stockholm is part of an archipelago of 24,000 islands, and a romantic way of seeing some is on a dinner cruise. Dinner on board has some traditional Swedish dishes, including pickled herring and fresh salmon with onions. And as for drinks, well, I think you can expect them to be that little bit more expensive on a cruise like this. But the beer is 38 krona, and the cheapest wine, a Californian, 165 krona. I'm leaving Stockholm for the countryside on Sweden's high-speed train, the X2000. It's silent and smooth. And what's more, just like on an aircraft, the train has its own sound system, so I'm going to sit back, relax and listen to a bit of music. Now I'm in the very heart of the Swedish countryside, and behind me the home of one of Sweden's most famous sons. It was in the small town of Sundborn, in the central Dalarna region, that the artist Carl Larsson lived at the turn of the century. And with his wife Karen, he replaced the house's dark and sombre decor with bright, light and warm designs, the blueprint for Sweden's stylish modern interiors. The house is full of Larsson's family paintings. Country accommodation ranges from hostels in traditional wooden buildings to smart, expensive hotels. Everywhere I stayed, I found simple but stylish design. The Hotel Dalecarlia overlooks Lake Siljan, one of 6,000 in Sweden's so-called Lake District. If you go down to the woods today, you'll be in for a disappointment. Bears roam wild in the forests of the far north, not here. But you can see them at Lake Siljan's Bear Park, 15 of them altogether. What strikes you most about the Swedish countryside is its space and its peace. In my case, fleetingly glimpsed through the carriage window. Another train, this time to the university town of Uppsala. And another cost, a cup of coffee, 11 krona. Sweden's ancient capital, a city small enough to stroll around and enjoy its relaxed, mellow charm. The seat of one of Europe's greatest and oldest universities, where an ex-student became known as the father of botany and the flower king. Carl Linnaeus classified plants, giving Latin names and descriptions to some 10,000 different species. Over 200 years later, they remain at the heart of today's system of identification. In his old Uppsala garden, 1,300 are laid out to his original plan. All the places we've been to are near railway stations or on bus routes, so it's relatively easy to get about. As for the cost, well, it is less expensive in Sweden now than it was, but it's still not cheap. Many of the prices compare with those at home, but the quality and the style is very high.